Okay, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. It's 6 p.m. You're in the council chambers of the city of Platteville, and I'm calling the regular meeting and the final regular meeting of 2022 to order. We'll start with roll call, Candace.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Kathy Kopp.
Here.
Jason Arts.
Here.
Lynn Parrott.
Here.
Todd Casper.
Here.
Okay, we have a couple of presentations this evening. The first is the ceremonial swearing in of a new police officer, Larissa Clem. So Larissa, you get to come forward.
All right, so she's gonna have you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Larissa Clem,
having been appointed to the office of police officer,
having been appointed to the office of police officer,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bring back memories.
Yeah.
Larissa comes to us from Monroe. She's got a history or a background in graphic design. She was hired back in June, spent a long time at the Law Enforcement Academy at Southwest Tech, and she's ready to go out and do great things.
Larissa, do you want to say a few words?
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I look forward to serving the Platteville community.
Thank you. Okay, the second presentation we have tonight is from Enterprise Fleet Management. Adam, you want to make an intro?
Yeah, I will let Matt here kind of come up to the podium. But as you recall, in 2020, the city kind of entered into a kind of trial agreement here with Enterprise Fleet Management. We've had about 2 years now where we have been under that lease program. So thought it would be a good idea, as one of the requests that we kind of heard from the council was to have Enterprise Fleet Management kind of come in front of you and present kind of what the last 2 years have kind of looked like. As we all know, it's been kind of crazy with things going on in the auto market, but want to pitch it over to Matt to let him give you an update on everything that's been going on. So Matt, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. I know every council member has a packet, correct, per Adam, so the visual may be a little blurry at times on the screen, but overall, I have it up here too, so I'm not going to stare up there. We'll talk a little bit about the current relationship, the status, the good, some challenges, all the above. We'll talk a little bit about the current situation of the vehicles for the municipality, talk about the constraints and issues on the vehicle availability side of things. We'll walk through a quick cash flow, real life cash flow of what we were anticipating, but what has actually happened. And then we'll also talk about industry update stuff and outlook for not only just this model year, but going into January, which really kicks off the 2024 model year, which seems quite odd that we're still in 2022. And then we're going to really highlight some areas of opportunity and talk about a replacement strategy for some other vehicle needs throughout the model year 2024. So if anyone has any questions, what I'll do is I'll just go through a few slides that I have, and then I can field questions at the end, if that's okay. On this list here, again, for audience might be a little blurry, it is the City of Platteville's municipal fleet list. It believe has everything that is a non-CDL related vehicle outside of the police department. In total, 26 vehicles. The vehicles that are highlighted in yellow are non-enterprise vehicles. The vehicles that are left unhighlighted are ones that are currently on lease with Enterprise. And just to reiterate, the word lease is it's a funding solution for the municipality to work with enterprise. So they own the rights to the vehicle. So it's not a typical dealership retail lease. So again, this is just current data. It'll explain current odometer mileage, and in-service dates, length of lease on the vehicles that are on lease, so forth, and monthly payments and costs. This is stuff that leadership and administration has full access to every single day of our partnership. This here is our quick cash flow. So it kind of summarizes where the city was prior to working with us in the orange highlighted row. And then the next two lines are a 2-year kind of review of a cash flow. Originally, I think we only had 23 vehicles that we were really targeting. I think there was 3 airport vehicles that were not really on the current radar, but now that they are. So prior to working with us, the city was averaging about a $90,000 spend. That's acquiring about 1 vehicle per year on average, fixing and filling up them with maintenance and fuel would equal to about $90,000 in spend. In 2021, I think we delivered 2 total vehicles just based on order to delivery timing towards the end of that year. So you're going to see lease costs associated with the timing of the year, as well. And into 2022, we delivered an additional 12 vehicles. So we have a total of 14 vehicles that are currently on lease today. The lease costs will illustrate in your packet accordingly to what is being paid to enterprise today. So the $104,000 that is estimated to be spent over those 14 vehicles does include some of the equity gains from vehicles selling off and rolling that money into those new leases. In addition, if you buy a vehicle, you sell a vehicle typically. So an assumption that we have 14 vehicles on lease, the city has handled some of those resale remarketing efforts on those older vehicles. We don't have hard figures. There was no data supplied to us, so we used hard estimates from our original encounters. So very conservative dollars. So 14 vehicles equating to about a $52,000 equity return. I would suggest that number is probably pretty low. After we sold a few enterprise vehicles at about 8 to 9 months of age, we took those gains and rolled them into some of the leases. We actually had funds still available left over, about 36,000. So that's where that number is coming from. So the total capital budget for the last 2 years or 2 model years has been just under $17,000. We've moved maintenance spend from about 25,000 down to about 17,000. Fuel costs should decrease about 20%. So about 25,000 down to 22. And total fleet budget on average per year has been about $55,000. So I think the biggest thing to think about is we have 14 vehicles out on lease. We have turned some old ones out and sold some younger vehicles while we've been in partnership. And we still have spent less money out the door than what the city would have spent in 1 year buying 1 vehicle. So what we have created is an opportunity for the taxpayers to essentially pay less for newer vehicles, for the staff to supply services for their taxpayers. It's simply just a buy low, sell high mentality and lowering operating costs in between. And the data here strictly just proves that. So on average, the net cash savings so far has been about $70,000 of savings to the taxpayers, while the city has been operating 14 brand new vehicles compared to that on average 1 vehicle per year prior to our partnership. So it's pretty safe to say it's working. I do have some extra data points to show. The screen again is probably a little small. I'm going to blow mine up even too. So we have sold 4 total vehicles that are enterprise vehicles into the lease. So we delivered the vehicles in 21. We then ordered replacements and sold those first round of pickup trucks. Just to put a few things in perspective, the delivered price on those trucks were about $35,407. About 11 months later, into that lease with roughly 5,000 to 6,000 miles on them, we sold them for $44,450. So the figures of the vehicle delivering at 35,000 and us being able to sell it for 44 That right there creates a very positive equity position. So in a sense, those vehicles drove revenue for the city. Even after those 11 months of payments, so enterprise charging the city paying enterprise for those leases, collecting interest and our management fees while we do. The cost to Platteville for one of those trucks over those 11 months was $5,719. When we look at what the vehicle delivered for and what we sold it for, and take into the account of what the city has already spent out the door, we are still driving about $6,483 of revenue after enterprise has been paid. And after we have sold that vehicle. So money going out the door and then money coming back, the equation equates to about $6,400 of positive equity roll or equity gain or revenue per vehicle. We are still in the process of selling one more vehicle. We assume there's going to be about a conservative $10,000 to $11,000 of positive equity coming back from that unit as well. What I will say is times are changing slightly, just to be very blunt. We are a consulting company, a technology company, and a fleet management company, kind of just mixed into one. There's a perfect time to buy, there's a perfect time to sell. We will move with the market and we will consult and do that as best as possible for all of our clients. Since our partnership, we have probably developed north of a dozen extra relationships within cities, villages, school districts, and counties. And it's growing. So a lot of great data, a lot of great resources. This is just proof in the pudding that when I made that first phone call to Adam, I wasn't crazy. So I will field any questions anyone may have in relation to anything I said or want to go back over anything. This is your time to meet.
Okay, council questions, anybody?
I'm just
Matt?
wondering what long-term projections are in terms of the the equity gains, because it seems like right now, you know, with the climate there, you know, you're getting more money for resale, but what are do you have any projections in terms of how that's going to continue to go?
Yeah, so the slide here you'll see in the packet, maybe it's not right here, is kind of a 20+ year review on the resale market. So Mannheim Auto Auction, just so everyone knows, is the nation's largest auto auction. So it's across the country. So it's considered a very strong benchmark of the wholesale of vehicles. So this illustrates the spikes, the peaks and valleys. So obviously you can see through COVID, it was quite an interesting time. Yes, I think the city has taken full advantage of that opportunity, which we did. It is still at an all-time high, even though it is coming down, the market's normalizing a little bit, but we are still far beyond pre-COVID measures. And we were doing this before COVID was even a thought. So I fully anticipate nothing but giving 100% effort into consulting in the best way possible. I see this normalizing a little bit, but in the government world, it's almost bulletproof to the fact that you guys drop such little mileage and still buy vehicles more aggressive than the remaining civilians on the road, or dealerships or commercial clients for that matter. So there will be a slowing period, but with this kind of equity roll and gains and money being rolled into the leases, it just buys down the vehicle, which technically just increases the amount of equity gain in the vehicle that you own. So I only anticipate it to get stronger in that regards.
So Matt, I mean, we hear people are having trouble getting vehicles. Are you having trouble getting vehicles?
Oh yeah, everyone is. So the best part that the city was able to do was execute on 14 new vehicles back in 2021. I believe we have been able to supply all of those. I can firmly tell you that there's other municipalities who came on board later and who have not received their vehicles, or all of them. So I call it a blessing. There are challenges, but the one thing the city has going for them is we're building a history either with manufacturers or just in the fleet world in general. And we have a little bit more of a strong pull when it comes to vehicle allocation. Some of the manufacturers are shifting towards a controlled allocation. So they're controlling how many vehicles a municipality may actually order because of supply chain constraints. But being able to be proactive early in the order banks and having us in your back pocket to negotiate and monitor and use our private allocation at times for certain models and manufacturers is only going to benefit the city short term and long term. And the nice thing is you have a lot of newer vehicles on the road, so there's not a massive burden and need to like, oh my gosh, we need to replace the remaining of our fleet now. It's a progression still, but you were able to bite it enough off to put yourself in a really comfortable position.
Ken?
What is your thought or thoughts as far as EV?
Time do you have?
Well, I'm just.
No, it's
I'm
a good
just
question.
curious because you're buying, seems to me you're buying a higher priced vehicle.
Well, I think everything's relative. So I'd be lying if I told you that if I didn't have this conversation every time with the municipality. It comes up just about every single time. That's a great question. It's going to be in our future. 1%, less than 1% of vehicles are electric vehicles on the road today. In 2025, that'll be 30%. So if you can imagine how many vehicles there are in the world, that the EV world is moving so fast, we all can't keep up with it, but it's going to be here. So it's definitely a conversation to be having. It has to start with infrastructure, because you can't have an electric vehicle unless you have a means to charge it. So if you have a utilities division or electrical company or contractors in the area, it'd be something to look into as far as what does that cost of infrastructure look like? What are the sustainable benefits? What does it cost to install? And then from there, then we start having discussions about vehicle types, needs, application. For example, I looked on one of our internal fleet lists or fleet inventory that we have. We have 2 electric transit cargo vans available because a client ordered them, but they don't want them. I'm not sure where they are in the country, but it's just another example. Like cargo vans are becoming electric, SUVs, half-ton pickup trucks. So it's definitely going to be in the mix. Sedan. So City of Racine is a new client. They are starting with 5 electric vehicles and a bunch of police unmarked squads. Just because of the timing, that's really what's only orderable at this point. But I'm getting them in touch with a contractor locally out of the Menominee Falls area to start talking about infrastructure install, because they've already ordered these vehicles, so they're being built and they're going to be delivering in probably the next 3 to 4 months. So it is happening. So it's a moving target, Ken. I would still say the ICE vehicle, the internal combustion engine, is still the most cost-effective vehicle to buy, maintain, and sell in a government municipality. So I don't think you're missing out on anything quite yet. However, that's for you guys to decide if that's something you want to entertain. We are in the forefront, though, of EV world. So we sit down with all the manufacturers, the Teslas, the Rivians, the GMs, the Kia. I mean, everyone's getting into it. We have conversations weekly. We have a whole team of just electric vehicle experts that are doing the due diligence. We just partner with Domino's. I don't know if anyone's seen the Domino's electrification ads. They are a current client. So we went to them with GM and said, hey, you know, Domino's wanted to do this. So we all kind of partnered together, and they're going to be doing over 800 Chevy Bolts nationwide. So we are at the forefront. We are doing it. We have companies that we are going to partner with to help with infrastructure, but it's very early. Good to have the conversations because you don't want to be late to the game, but you don't want to be too early either.
As far as the locked vehicle, excuse me, the trucks, the heavy trucks, have they gone much into EVs for those?
Nope. I think Elon Musk just delivered their first electric semi to Pepsi Cola, I believe. So 1 out of millions in the world. So we're going to be a long way away from the larger trucks, even like your 1-ton chassis and your larger F550s for that matter. It's going to be some time till that can show proof of concept that if you think of friction and electric vehicle, it's the more it weighs, the more power it needs, just like a gas, but the gas is a little more forgiving and doesn't have as much range anxiety as an electric vehicle may. But the electric vehicle is going to be a very good solution for government municipalities because you guys drive so little and you always come back to home base. When I have a contractor that is wanting to do this and they drive 30,000 miles a year and they take them home, that's a different story, right? So you guys are the perfect, call it guinea pig. So when that time is necessary, we will already be partners and it'll be a very easy conversation to do some due diligence with.
Any other questions? By the way, they are making electric fire trucks.
Yep.
Madison has two, right, Ryan? Madison has two. And
But I know City of Racine has, I think, a handful of electric buses and they don't have enough infrastructure to charge all of them yet. So,
yeah, that's not good.
so yeah, let's not put the cart before the horse, but when that time comes, it'll be a good conversation.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then we thank you, Matt, for coming. We
Yep,
don't know
thank
where
you.
you came from, but we
Waukesha County, so I'm gonna head on
we
back,
hear the
so.
wind, so we hope you have a tailwind going home. But if you're coming from Waukesha, I think the wind's coming from the east, so you're probably gonna fight it all the way.
I fought it here. I did pass a City of Platteville Ford Fusion on the way. I had a nice minivan, if anyone saw, but not sure who that was. Is that you, Adam?
No.
Okay. They were driving crazy. Oh my gosh. Just kidding. Thank
All
you.
right. Great, thank you. All right, let us then go on to our public hearings, where we have two public hearings tonight. So the first public hearing we have is on ordinance 22-06 subdivision regulations. Joe.
Yes, this is a ordinance change related to land divisions, specifically minor subdivisions. So right now, our ordinance requires a full preliminary plat, final plat process for any land division that creates more than 2 lots. So this proposal would increase that amount. So anything more than 4 lots would require a preliminary plat, final plat. So instead, this would allow for a certified survey map to be used for those smaller subdivisions. So the main reason this kind of came about was we've been working over the last couple of years to do ordinance changes that encourage additional development, housing development in particular, make it easier, cheaper to create. And this is one of those, it's kind of a minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but it does help that a preliminary plat, final plat process is longer to get approved. It's more expensive for the application. It's more expensive to hire the surveyor. The recording fees are higher. So it all kind of adds up if somebody's trying to create a lot for housing development. So this is a small change that heads in that direction. This also brings our ordinance more in conformance with Grant County's ordinance. It kind of aligns with the state statute process and most of the communities in the area as well. Another kind of a minor change as part of that is right now our ordinance requires a certified survey map for any lot consolidation, which also is very unusual. I couldn't find any other examples of communities that require that. The idea being that if a lot is already existing and it's legal, if you're combining it, making it bigger, it's going to meet our ordinance. You know, it's usually our concern is if it's getting smaller, if it's going to get too small. So this change would also eliminate that need. Same kind of thinking that it brings it more into conformance with other ordinances and makes that process a little easier. So staff recommends approval of the change. The Plan Commission considered this and also recommended approval. Any questions?
Any questions for Joe? Here, the staff presentation and the applicant are the same, so
Correct.
I have had nobody register in favor, against, or in general relative to this amendment to chapter 21. So we can go to council discussion. Anybody with any questions, concerns, needing clarification?
Have a motion.
The
Everybody-
first motion we have to have then, Todd, is to close the public hearing. Yeah.
Motion to close the public hearing, I guess.
I'll second.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and second to close that public hearing. Now, we'll have to vote. Thank you, Candace, for reminding me.
Doss,
Yes,
Killian,
yes,
Nichols, Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
and now Is there action on this particular request? Todd,
I have a motion, a motion to approve the amendments to chapter 21 subdivision regulations as proposed.
second. Okay, we have a motion by Todd and a second by Eileen to approve these amendments to chapter 21, the subdivision regulations ordinance as proposed. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes,
Motion carries.
Okay, the second public hearing tonight then is to set the taxi and bus fares for 2023. Howard.
Yes, good evening. DOT requires that any significant change in operation of our transportation system be set through a public hearing. One of those would be a change in fares. We last changed fares effective January 1st, 2022 for the taxi only. Staff is proposing to increase fares again as of January 1st for both taxi and the bus. Currently this year, the cost per ride, based on actual numbers for the taxi is $11.62 per ride, year to the end of October. Cost per ride for the bus is $6.14. It's anticipated that due to fuel and driver costs of service will increase. You'll see that later in the action item. DOT gives us an estimate, 56.1% for our federal and state subsidies. The remaining 43.9% is split between fare revenues and subsidies from the city and the university. Pre-COVID, the city spent 45 to 50,000 for its share, and UW Platteville spent about 125 for a total of 175. It's anticipated that to keep the service as it currently is would require the city and university to split somewhere between $250,000 and $260,000, or about a 50% increase. Since this is not a mandatory item, under the laws of supply and demand, when prices go up, demand will go down, ridership will drop a little bit. But with these increases, we estimate that roughly about 90% of the fare revenue increase will decrease the city and university local share portion. Only about 10% will affect the federal and state subsidies. The only caveat is that the DOT uses the grant paperwork that was submitted last Friday to determine the maximum federal and state grant. If our revenues come in lower than projected, then the city and the university ends up making up the difference. So I try to budget the revenues a little bit conservatively so that we're not surprised with an additional requirement at the end of the year. We have a resolution with the increases, and then I have kind of a two-page summary here. The first one shows the 2022 taxi and bus fares, and then the other one shows it as a strikeout and in bold. So for example, for the taxi, for regular adult passengers, we're asking that the fares go from $3 to $5. For seniors, handicapped, and children, go from $2.75 to $4.50. Additional riders go from $1 to $2. Fares outside the city limits, they get charged the regular base rate plus a $4 or a $3 per mile charge, and I'm recommending that go to 4 miles. Now, our rules require that the taxi rides either begin or end within the city limits. and that the rides are limited to a 9-mile radius of the city limits. So if a person is, for example, is going from a residence outside of the city of Platteville and coming to Aldi's or downtown or the hospital, that's allowed, and they can use the taxi for that. And that's generally what we get. Intermediate stops. We've had the taxis pick up people and they say, oops, let's swing by the bank and check out the ATM. So we established a fare of $1 per intermediate stop, and I'm asking that be increased to $2. Agencies. Agency fares are currently $6 per ride for the taxi. These are federal and state agencies, usually job share or other agencies, Medicare's, Medicaid type agencies that provide transportation assistance to their client. And what we're recommending is that the full cost of the transportation be placed on that agency instead of being supplemented locally. So since the taxi is a little under $12 a ride, we're recommending that go to $12 per ride. Same with package delivery. Usually that's been wheelchair returns and some medication deliveries. It's rare, it doesn't happen a lot. As far as the bus, because the university is still paying their local share subsidy, we're saying that the students would ride free by showing their student ID. All other rides, we would recommend that they go from $1 to $2 per ride, and that we increase the unlimited ride pass from $25 to $40 a month. Members of the public purchase 2 months, get the third month free, and I would recommend that we keep that. Recently, agencies have started to also use the bus pass as well. So we're recommending that the agencies have a new fare established at $6 per ride or $60 per month for the ride pass, but we do not recommend a discount for the agencies. Right now, what happens is the agencies contact the city directly and they get a bus pass, the same as member of the public. It's just that they would be charged the higher rate. So all of those fares are listed in the proposed resolution 22-28. So we're recommending that resolution be adopted.
Okay, again, in this case, the staff member, the applicant here is the city. And so the staff and applicant are the same. There have been no registrations for, against, or in general. So we're to council discussion and council. So anybody have questions? Kathy?
I would like to address the ridership when specifically with seniors. The bus, if I'm reading this correctly, in 1 year, 21 people, seniors rode the bus.
Yes.
Okay, for the taxi, it's very much higher.
Correct.
And I know that there have been concerns raised about the bus with pickup locations for seniors. So my concern is the cost for, and I didn't do the percentages of increase, but it's considerably more for the taxi, which is what our seniors are using, the seniors and disabled. So if I'm reading that right, So I guess I understand the need to raise these fees, but I guess it comes with a question. Has there been a transportation committee meeting where seniors have been able to meet and discuss the bus issue? Because these increases may drive bus ridership for seniors if the drop off and pickup locations were factored in, or if they had a discussion.
I have been unable to get a transportation committee meeting together this fall. It's difficult to get the meeting together to make that happen. So no, they have not been able to do that.
I was just going to thank Howard for going through all these numbers. I can only imagine trying to figure this issue out with the way the economy is changing. Also want to thank the university for their generous partnership in this. I don't see what else we can do. We certainly don't, from what I can see, we don't want to get rid of this program, because in a few years, perhaps the economy changes and it becomes more affordable for us again. But how to weigh through these changing economic times. I don't know what the price of a gallon of gas is today, but I've watched it change overnight, 60 or 80 cents. At some point, perhaps we can look at changing the routes a little bit, taking away some of the time to make up for this. I'm assuming, Howard, that your rates you've set up here kind of bail us out of our problem so far, if everything stays the same.
I do the best I can with my crystal ball. We've raised taxi fares. This would be the third time since I've been here. Every time that we've done it, like I say, ridership goes down 10 to 20%. The fare revenues have gone up, because of the fare going up. So it's kind of one of those things where you just do the best guess you can on some of that. I'm sure that the non-student bus ridership will probably go down a little bit with the increase, but hopefully, as Kathy mentioned, maybe with the increase in the taxi fares, maybe that would shift some more people to using the bus. I don't know.
I'm just thinking perhaps maybe in the future, we could look at a reduction in service during the times the university isn't in school, when we do have that lower ridership, and perhaps through the summer months and some of the big break periods that they have, to save some money, just as an idea or a possibility.
Sure. Just so that you understand, our minimum bus service right now is 2 buses during the academic year and 1 bus during the non-academic times. If we have the budget, we would love to be able to do 3 buses during the academic year, but at this point, we'll get to that later. But yeah.
So Howard, are the residents aware of this proposed change? $2. I mean, it's gone from $3 to $5. We just changed it last year, right? But last year we changed it only to like 50 cents or something, right?
Yes.
Last year's increase wasn't that significant. But
Correct.
how are we gonna let them know, considering this is December? Like, how will they find out? They just won't get on the taxi and
as a public hearing, this was in the paper, I think twice. It's been notified on our website. If it's approved, then what I would be doing is I would be asking the taxi and the bus to basically post a notice in their vehicles, you know, basically saying, hey, effective January 1st. That sort of a thing.
So we've posted it on social media and we've posted it on our website and we've advertised that the public hearing and the rates, my recollection is the rates were in the paper, weren't they?
I don't recall.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to look back. Maybe that's just because I've looked at them here, but
Did we do anything prior to kind of get any feedback from residents about the rate?
I didn't send anything
Sorry.
out specifically, no.
Okay.
other questions?
Just a question. I think our deadline for approving this contract is the end of the month. Is that correct?
The contract is a separate action
Okay,
coming up later, but yes,
This is the fair.
it has to be finished by the end of the month. And we
the
only-
contract
Right,
has to
the
be
contract has to be signed by the end of the month, and we only have this meeting this month.
Right.
correct.
Okay, any other questions? If there's no other council discussion, then I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Lynn to close the public hearing. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then we're looking for if there is to be action on this item of setting the taxi and bus fares for 2023.
I move to approve resolution 2228 taxi and bus fares for 2023.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Eileen and a second by Todd to approve this resolution 22-28 for taxi and bus fares for 2023. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, those are the two public hearings that we have for tonight. We will now move on to consideration of the consent agenda. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature. We have the council minutes from November 22nd. We have payment of bills. We have the financial report for November. I have no appointments for boards and commissions. We have licenses tonight, temporary Class B to serve fermented malt beverages and wine to the Platteville Main Street program for Wednesday, December 14th, 4 to 6. This is the monthly mingle at the Holiday Inn. We have 1 and 2 year operator licenses to serve and sell alcohol as we're in your packet, taxi driver license and taxi vehicle license. Is there anybody who would
Move
like?
to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda are citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. If I had nobody register, is there anybody on the council that has any item that they want to highlight? Perhaps from their committee or anything? Then we'll move on. Reports in your packets, the Community Safe Routes Committee, Jason?
Nothing to add.
The Water and Sewer Commission, Ken or Eileen?
no addition,
Commission on Aging, Kathy.
Nothing additional.
There is the senior center holiday gathering is this Thursday, the 15th. If you want to attend, you need to call for your meal by tomorrow. Okay, Housing Authority Board, Eileen.
Nothing to add.
Police and Fire Commission, Kathy.
The only thing I want to comment about is that there's a public meeting on Tuesday second floor of the library at 6 o'clock on the fire station. So encourage people to come out to hear that.
Right. Other reports in your packet, the water and sewer financial report for November, the airport financial report for November. Information from the Tide Committee and I lost my place. And department progress reports. Any questions?
I have two. The first one is to Howard, and this is about the new requirement to not use riprap on stream banks. And my question is simply, why is this being taken away? That's been around for years and years and decades. So what are they going to replace it with? Can you answer the question? The why and the answer to the question, what's going to replace it?
I don't have an answer on a replacement just yet. The issue is certain endangered species, cricket frogs and other endangered species not being able to reproduce or
Mating frogs.
or survive in areas where there's riprap.
Okay. So my next question goes to
Just hold. Howard, that wasn't your decision. No riprap.
No, it was a DNR.
All right. I want it clearly understood. This is not a local decision.
No,
This is not even a county decision.
No.
This is a decision made for us, so to speak.
Right. That doesn't
Correct.
mean we don't care about the frogs or other
Yeah.
creatures, but
Right.
so is well, put it this way, is a decision made for the whole state of Wisconsin
Yes,
Yep.
isn't it? Or is it just Southwest Wisconsin?
or just for certain species?
at least in the southwest portion of the state. I'm not sure the full extent, but in the southwest corner of the state.
Go ahead. You have another question.
I have another question, that's for the
Bob?
parks people. And the question is about what struck me was the amount of water that's being lost from the pool. And so you've given a long answer there. And so can you sum it up a little bit as to why we're leaking 2 million gallons of water out of the 3 million used?
I can tell you that we have two different engineering firms that are going to hopefully give us the answer, the real answer. This has been an ongoing problem for at least a decade. Part of that problem is delayed maintenance. We know that. Part of the other problem is they couldn't really find it. So they tried to scope it before about 10 years ago, could not find it. Probably did not have the technology they do now. We tried to last year. I can tell you on the very first day of employment, Adam took me around to the different buildings. And the first thing we saw was the fire hose running from a hydrant into the pool on February 2nd. So we knew we had a problem. Yeah, it was leaking. You have to maintain a certain amount of water in the deep end of the pool. The idea was so that additional freezing wouldn't cause additional cracking. So if the cold air had gotten in there, maybe the problem would have been bigger than it is. So we know there's been a problem for at least 10 years. Well, at least that's what they tell me. So we're trying to find that problem. We have two engineers that are proposing solutions, or at least the way to find the problem. So I'm hoping to hear back from them within the next week or so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have for
Yep.
these reports.
It does seem a little strange to pump water into a swimming pool in February.
And then to do it about 2 weeks after that again.
Again.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on any of the reports? Otherwise, we'll move into the action portion of our agenda. And the first action item is contract 10-22A, taxi and bus contract or taxi and contract 1022B bus for 2002 to 2023 to 2027 service. So this would be a 5-year contract. Hey, Howard.
Thank you. DOT requires a request for proposal process every 5 years for our public transportation contracts. We put out a taxi contract 1022A and a bus contract 1022B. Put that out on the street on September 28th. Proposals were due back on November 4th. As per the state, what it is it's a 2-year contract with a fixed price per service hour and up to 3 1-year extensions with that base contract price increasing in accordance with the consumer price index. We received 1 proposal each for 22A and 22B from our current providers, Running Incorporated for the taxi and Russ Stratton Buses Incorporated for the bus surface. An evaluation committee reviewed the proposals in accordance with the criteria and recommends continuing with our current contractors. COVID, driver shortages, fuel impacted both of our contractors, but it hit the bus service a little bit more. Previous owner retired, there was change of staff. As I alluded to earlier, we would normally have 3 buses during the school year, but recently have only been able to operate 2. The RFP reflected the minimum hours for the bus of 5,200 hours with 2 buses and up to 7,661 with 3 buses. The taxi currently operates 13,500 hours, and our RFP allows flexibility to decrease to 10,000 hours or increase to as many as 15,000 hours. Running Incorporated, our taxi provider, submitted a 12.6% increase from $32.38 an hour to $36.34 an hour. Technically, it is larger than inflation, but it's lower than the fuel increase from September 21 to September 22. And then, like I said, they had limited CPI increases over the past few years, so I don't have a problem with that. Our bus service submitted prices based on the price of diesel fuel. As long as diesel prices do not exceed $5.25 a gallon, the cost is a 67% increase from $38.14 an hour to $63.72 an hour. If the price of diesel fuel goes above $5.25 a gallon on a weekly average, cost goes to $68.90 per hour. I keep trying to work with DOT. Like I say, they require 2 years at a fixed rate and then increases for the next 3 based on consumer price index. I think that large increases for wages and diesel fuel were hidden over those years. And so I'm hopeful that this is kind of a one-time adjustment. These came in after the city's 23 budget were established. But with status quo hours for both systems and our proposed fare increases that were just passed, I'm looking at the local share at a little over $220,000, which would mean about $55,000 for the city and just under $166,000 for the university. During COVID, we had special COVID funding that reduced or eliminated that local share. And there's some funding in the fund balance based on some of that. So we had originally proposed that we cover the city share with the fund balance. And in discussions with Nicola and Adam, we can cover that increase from what was in that original budget proposal with what's in that fund balance. We have a letter from the university committing to the proposed increase in their share of funding. So at this point, we can do one of the following: award the contracts at the bid price and status quo hours, and use the fare increases and fund balance to cover the local share increase, which is basically what I'm proposing. What we could do is we could award both contracts with a reduction in taxi hours and use the fare increases and fund balance to cover, or we could reject one or both bids. Staff is recommending that we award both bids at the proposed prices.
Okay, questions?
These are your motions at your suggestion here on this page.
He's suggesting either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but not all 4.
Well,
Your suggestion is number 1, right?
correct, which is in the sample motions below. Basically 2 motions, one for the taxi contract and one for the bus contract.
So the 175 in that's left over in the fund, what else is that used for typically?
Well, typically, we wouldn't expect to have a large fund balance, and so the city received a lot of COVID-related grant funding to the taxi bus fund in the last couple of years. I think it's not crystal clear how that fund balance can be used. I would hazard a guess that that the powers that be haven't determined that either. There's been a lot of additional funding from the federal government passing through states for all kinds of things COVID related. And so it may not be determined by the state, and our audit on the program is, will be probably several years from now. I'm not sure how many years ahead we get before they go back and audit, 2020 and 2021. But I think it's reasonable to use that fund balance and not just have it sit there. So we're putting it to use within, the transit system to help support the transit system. So that's, I think, the best that we can answer right now. So we certainly have fund balance available to cover the additional cost.
And just to clarify, the taxi bus fund is an enterprise fund, so it is separate from the general fund. So we're not talking about general fund balance.
Okay.
We're talking about the fund balance of this specific enterprise fund.
It's a minor clarification. It's a special revenue fund, not an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund would be the water sewer utility.
Okay.
But yes, you're right. It is a separate fund, and the revenues that go into it are restricted for use and stay within that fund. Yes.
So would you be able to use more of that fund to offset the rate increases?
In other words, are you saying, could we not increase the costs to the riders and use more fund balance? I mean, that's certainly an option. I think we would have to undo what we did earlier in the meeting.
Okay.
But there's also, I think we're having to look ahead over the next couple of years and say, how is this sustainable? And I think that as we explore that, having some fund balance available will help, help provide support to the system until we figure out how to make it sustainable.
So there's like no expiration in terms of you have to use it by this
Not that
I
they've
don't
given us
believe
right
so.
now, no.
I don't believe so, no.
But I think, yeah, I think the thought process you're making, Jason, is valid. It's one to think about, in the future. I don't think you want to pull that trigger now, but
Okay.
if we continue to see something, that's when you start to have the conversations of, is there ways that you can stretch out instead of having to cancel a route? Do you do this, or
Sure.
is there ways that you can do that more effectively?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I echo Todd's sentiment relative to the university and the letter of support so that we know that we can continue to operate. It's a giant increase. I understand that. Okay, if there is no more discussion, does somebody want to offer a motion on contract 1022A, the taxi?
I would move to award contract 1022A for the taxi to Running Inc. at the bid price of $36.34 per hour.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second regarding contract 1022A for the taxi. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and do we want to take action on contract 1022B? This is the bus contract.
I'll move to award contract 1022B bus to Russ Stratton Buses Incorporated at the bid price of $63.72 an hour, subject to an increase to $68.90 an hour based on local diesel fuel prices.
So we have a motion and a second to approve contract 1022B. The higher amount per hour would be if fuel prices increase past $5.25 per gallon. We'll vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. We'll go on to our second action item tonight, which is the RFP that we did for auditing services.
Yes, so we had 4 firms that city staff has been kind of working with in regards to a request for auditing services. That was Johnson Block, Kerber Rose, Bauman Associates, and Lauterbach and Amen. So over the course of kind of the week of November 28th through December 2nd, the subcommittee consisting of myself, Administrative Director Maurer, and Sheila Horner, our comptroller, actually interviewed all 4 of these individual firms. We asked pretty much the same series of questions to gauge a better understanding of each firm's experience with the city's financial software, programming, auditing timeline, auditing process, et cetera. I think we were very impressed, obviously, with all 4 of the firms. Some of the concerns we did have a little bit, though, were some of the pricing differences that we saw throughout this. So this is kind of one of the reasons we do these request for proposal exercises, is to kind of gauge the market and see where things are at. So the subcommittee kind of reviewed several factors regarding switching to a different auditing firm for 2023. And the biggest concern that staff has is we are in the process of switching the city to a new time and attendance system. And unfortunately, that system was intended to be rolled out in October and tested in November and kind of December and had all the bugs and everything kinked out. Due to delays from the software company, the city will not be able to roll this out till the first quarter of 2023. So obviously our big concern is typically in the first quarter. That's when we do our audit. So when we're talking about the time that's going to have to be spent on really kind of getting the bugs and kinks out of a time and attendance system, we have some concerns about switching to a new auditing firm kind of during that process and what that would mean for the staff. So kind of looking at those concerns, the subcommittee recommended the city enter into a 1-year contract with our current auditing provider, which would be Johnson Block, and then look to go back out for proposals in the summer of 2023. This will essentially enable the finance team to have another year of auditing experience, as we do have some new individuals that are in our finance team, especially in the water and sewer side. So we want to make sure to give them that, as well as this will give our comptroller another year under her belt of really kind of being able to understand kind of the nuances. And then we'll be able to kind of go out and look at hoping that these firms would then reapply and kind of consider, because we were very impressed, obviously, with all of the firms that we spoke with. So what we're looking for tonight is essentially a motion to authorize the city manager and the administration director to enter into a 1-year agreement with Johnson Block to conduct auditing services for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022.
Okay, questions, comments? Anybody with questions? Otherwise, I would take a motion.
I'll move to authorize the city manager and administration director to enter into a one-year agreement to conduct auditing services for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2022.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion by Kathy and a second by Ken to approve this one-year contract with Johnson Block for auditing services. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next action item on our agenda is the Family Advocates Development Agreement. Adam.
Okay, so we have had this on the agenda for a couple of times, but this is being brought back tonight for action. So I'm not going to go into details really about kind of what was in the grant. I think we talked about that last time we did this presentation. So what I kind of want to get into is obviously the meat of kind of what has changed with the development agreement or what has kind of been agreed upon by both sides. So what we're looking at here is per direction from the Common Council, approval was granted obviously for a plan unit development with the approval contingent on Family Advocates successfully entering into a development agreement with the city. Over the course of October and November, city staff has been working with the Common Council, Family Advocates, and our municipal attorney on the finalization of a development agreement that could be approved by the Common Council. The finalized development agreement before the council this evening includes the following. The submission of the grant to State of Wisconsin Department of Administration was for 3.6 million, but after reducing the entity's required contributions, that would be Family Advocates, the city, and Delta 3, who each made monetary matches. The grant award is for 3.5 million. The construction should be completed no later than December 31st, 2024. The zoning approval for the PUD is only for Family Advocates and will default back to the M2 zoning if the property is sold, unless the new property owner enters into a new PUD with the Common Council. Disbursements will be done by the city of Platteville to Family Advocates after receiving requests from Family Advocates, which will then be forwarded to the DOA for approval. There's some information here about Family Advocates obviously needing to acknowledge the city's obligation. In the event the DOA seeks return of the DOA funds or any portion thereof after the city has dispersed them from Family Advocates will work with the city to return those funds. Then it talks about term limits. So the development agreement now will have a 10-year term limit to it. So it'd be 2023 to 2032. And then there is a development fee. So Family Advocates has agreed to pay the city of Platteville a development fee for the project. It's 1% development fee based on the awarded grant. So if you take the $3.5 million times 1%, that comes to about $35,233.45. The payment will be made over the terms of the agreement. The annual payment will be $3,523.34. The payment will be due on or before January 31st of each year. And then there is a clause that was put in here that will be a reduction in the annual payment will occur for any property owned by Family Advocates sold, which then will become taxable. Consideration will also be made to reduce the annual payment if any property owned by Family Advocates in the city of Platteville is sold to a nonprofit. And then they would obviously enter into a fee agreement with the city. So this information, after we had kind of the draft redeveloped by our attorney, was sent to Family Advocates. I spoke with their executive director, Aaron Cullen, who reviewed it and basically agreed that everything that both sides was kind of looking at is now in this development agreement, and they are in favor of moving forward. So again, what we talked about here from a budgetary fiscal impact is the property identified for the construction of this project is within the tax increment district number 6. So the developer fee collected over the term of this development agreement will be utilized to assist with the expenditure of that district. It'll go directly into there. So what city staff is looking for tonight is recommending that the Common Council approve the development agreement for Family Advocates.
Okay, questions, comments?
You have a motion. I move to approve the development agreement between the city of Platteville and Family Advocates and authorize the city manager to obtain the appropriate signatures.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the development agreement as presented and to authorize the city manager to see that it is appropriately executed. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols.
Yep.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, we'll move now into the information and discussion items in our agenda. The first is the resolution for street discontinuance for Jones Street. Joe.
Yes, so this is a request to discontinue the remaining portion of Jones Street. So Jones Street really functions more like an alley. It's located between Steve's Pizza, the Updraft Brewery, and the Ticket. And then just north of the Hardig Pharmacy. So even though all those properties on that block that have frontage on this alley, they do have other street frontage, so they have access to other public streets. However, all these properties still utilize this section of Jones Street for access to parking lots behind their buildings. It's also utilized for garbage pickup. Hardig Drug doesn't have frontage on this, but they use the alley as kind of their drive-through lane for their pickup window. And any vehicles bypassing, a vehicle waiting for that would have to utilize that right of way. So public access is still a very important concern. So staff does have some concerns about this request for that reason. So our initial recommendation as far as options to the Plan Commission was either to deny the request, approve it, but require an easement that be maintained to allow two-way access to all these properties, or discontinue only a portion of the right of way. So the Plan Commission considered this and I guess shared some of the concerns, but they do wanted to work with the applicant for the Updraft Brewery to help their project succeed. So they're recommending what was my original option B, just to discontinue a portion of the right of way, basically be the western 12 feet of what's remaining. This would allow the brewery to have the space needed if they need to install some storage tanks to support the brewery, and would still allow the access, 24 feet of access. So it allows two-way traffic for other properties needing to utilize their parking and so forth. So that seems to be the best compromise solution in this case. So staff would also concur with that recommendation. So right now this is scheduled for a public hearing at the first meeting in January. Any questions?
Okay, questions by folks on this. So the Plan Commission said that previously, in a previous, there had been a portion of Jones Street discontinued, like in 2016. I think that allowed maybe it allowed the drive-through for the pizza delivery.
Yeah, and it was actually a similar request because at that time they were going to expand Steve's Pizza and do the brewery within the building expansion and need the space for equipment for the brewing portion. That didn't take place, but they're putting in this building instead. But the same idea is that for exterior storage tanks and so forth, they would need the space at some point in the future.
So this will basically square that off. This proposal. Okay, if anybody has a question or wants to go down and look, if you do so before the January meeting, that would be great.
I have a question or two.
Okay, Ken?
This little building, I think it's labeled 145. It's right next to West Main. Initially, that was going to be torn down. So now what's happening to it? There's a business in there. And is that owned by the same people as it was in the past?
So the property at 155 West Main used to be the screen print business years ago. That was going to be torn down when the Steve's Pizza was going to expand. When that project did not go forward, that building is remaining. So my understanding is that building is still going to remain. They're going to use that for basically cold storage for the brewery. So the brewery is their main operation will be in that 45 South Chestnut building. But the building at 155 West Main will be essentially the cold storage to support that brewery.
My map says
Yeah, the map actually, Joe, the street map
145.
says 145.
145, it goes out to the street. So that's where that business is in now. So they're going to take over 145. Is that correct?
So I'm not sure which map you're looking at.
We're looking at the actual street view map. So the one with the buildings on it. It's on page 259 of our packet. I don't know what I don't know if you have page numbers on yours.
Yeah, that's a Google map. Those addresses are not correct.
Oh, so Ken, that map, the Google map isn't correct. It says 145.
That's right. So that's supposed to be what?
155.
155. So that's gonna be used by Steve's Pizza and the brewery?
It'll be used by the Updraft Brewery. Correct.
Okay. I see that they're working on the brewery. In years past, your husband was gonna be the brewmaster?
That would be the plan, Ken, and yes, I will be abstaining from any votes on this subject when it comes up next time.
Okay, my next question is, I assume you answered this, that all these people that have to have access along this rest of Jones, are they gonna be able to have access? You know, we got 135. That's the old State Farm. They spoke at the meeting, and also Reniker spoke at the meeting. So all those people are going to have access sufficient.
Yes, that was our concern. That's the reason for the remaining, keeping 24 feet of distance so that it's wide enough to have two-way traffic. So those properties can still get, or the tenants or owners of those properties can still get to their properties. As I mentioned, some of them have parking in the rear of their buildings that still has to be used. And also garbage collection takes place in the back of their buildings.
And then let's see, at that plant commission meeting, you brought up, maybe mentioned it tonight, about parking for the brewery on South Chestnut. Did you mention that tonight?
That will be a different subject matter that will be coming to the council in the future.
It's coming in the future.
Yes.
Well, my future question then is, what type of vehicles are going to be parking on the street? So
Well,
put that down as a future question. And
Will do.
also, second future question is that in coming out of Hardwick after driving through on the alley and picking up my medicine from Hardwick, how well will I be able to see down the street toward turning left is my big concern. I want to be able to turn left. So if you have vehicles parked in front of the brewery, how big will those vehicles be and how much will they block my vision to the right and make it difficult for me to turn to the left?
So those are future questions.
So those are
That is not on
Yeah.
this tonight, the only thing on our agenda is the street discontinuance. But Joe, I'm sure that you will write those questions down and that they will be addressed if and when that comes to our attention.
Based on today's presentation, the future answer in 2035 is they will all be electronic vehicles, Ken.
They won't be electronic.
They will all be
They
electronic.
will all be
vehicles.
electric vehicles, right?
I was also gonna, just a future comment, when we redid Main Street, particularly around Main and Fourth Street, we had specific parking for vehicles that were non-SUV, non-pickup truck. That over time changed. I mean, I'm guessing it won't be any worse than there. I can only imagine, you know, that's changed and it's tough
At the corners.
at the corners of Fourth and Main.
That's still a problem on some of these streets because
Yes, it
Right.
is.
you get a big pickup, but you can't see around the pickup.
No,
Mhm.
or a pedestrian walking out behind it, yes. Hopefully this won't be the same way, but that's a future question.
Okay, well, we have the street discontinuance for Jones Street. The recommendation from the Plan Commission supported by staff is to keep 24 feet and just to give a portion. So we'll have a public hearing on that at our January meeting. And now we will talk about snow removal from streets and sidewalks, a procedures update.
Yeah, so obviously with the blowing wind, this seems kind of appropriate, I would suppose. to talk about this, but so I received a request to have staff provide an overview for council members and the public regarding the city of Platteville snow removal procedures. So within the city of Platteville emergency operation plan is Public Works attachment F3, which indicates the following that you can see in your packet. Just kind of talks about the purpose, the concept of the operation, the kind of the primary routes they're responsible for, secondary streets. So then further in the packet, it talks about it's the policy of the city of Platteville to maintain safe streets, sidewalks, and paths to the best of our ability while minimizing the cost. To that end, designated emergency routes will have the highest priority for maintaining to bare surface as much as possible. So these emergency routes include street access from the hospital / EMS, police department, and fire department. They include state highways, county highways, streets providing access to schools and business districts, and other major streets. And then the police department dispatch may request diverting of snow plowing assists to support emergency responders as needed. So in the packet is obviously a listing of all the snow emergency route streets. So this is information that will be in the packet. It's obviously information that we put out on Facebook. We also put this on the website as well, but you can see all the different listings that start from Water Street between Highway 151 and the North City limits, and then goes all the way down. The last one being here, Court Street between Pine Street and Southwest Road. So the current staffing of the streets division includes 9 CDL drivers, including the superintendent and mechanic. Other CDL holders include the building maintenance specialist and at least 1 employee of the parks division, and at least 4 employees of the water and sewer maintenance division. In a normal snow event, which would be defined as an overnight event from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., up to 3 inches of snow, no blowing of snow, and no ice, the streets division crew is called in by the superintendent at 3 a.m. Crew members have specific equipment assigned, and each crew member is assigned a section of the city. I also want to preface too, that doesn't mean just because we have 9 CDL drivers that they're all out at one point in time. Depending on kind of the event, they may schedule to have 2 or 3, and then 3 hours later they have kind of, rotating shifts so that we're not using everybody there. So again, crew members start on the emergency routes in their assigned section, then other streets working from most traveled to least traveled. In this normal snow event with all street division crew members available, all streets are generally cleared in about 8 to 9 hours. During this time, the building maintenance specialist clears around City Hall and does normal tasks. The Parks Division works on clearing alleys, parking lots, city-owned sidewalks, and paths. And the Water and Sewer Maintenance Division clears driveways at the water and sewer properties and keeps fire hydrants clear. If one person from the Streets Division crew is unavailable, then the building maintenance specialist will be called in to substitute for the unavailable employee. The Parks Division clears sidewalks around City Hall then. Otherwise, actually, it's one of us, because our Director of Public Works has been known to pitch in and clear the sidewalks depending on what's going on, or myself or anybody who's around. And also Doug and everybody else. So we all pitch hit. So again, weather conditions will impact the above decisions. If there is ice or blowing snow or continuous snowfalls, crews will prioritize the emergency routes. Even if these streets need to be cleared multiple times during an event, this will obviously then delay the clearing of the remaining streets. If a continuous snowfall or a snowfall outside normal working hours, the superintendent then calls in up to 2 crews to work the emergency routes, while the remaining crew then members get to rest. There is an agreement between the city and UW Platteville, where UW Platteville clears all of University Plaza, Greenwood Avenue, and from Longhorn Drive to the end of the street above the wastewater plant, and then College Drive from Sunset Drive to Greenwood Avenue. There is a payment to the university based on our general transportation aid payment for that work. And then Longhorn Drive is a private street owned and maintained by the university. Citizens should understand, obviously, that if workers are pulled from other tasks to plow snow, there may be delays in other tasks such as snow removal in alleys, parking lots, sidewalks, and pathways. Obviously, we will train as much as possible, but there will likely be some equipment downtimes as operators unfamiliar with a piece of equipment try to complete these tasks. There will likely be additional overtime for others if 1 or more operators are unable to work due to illness. So that kind of just goes through the snow plowing. Then we also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of sidewalks, because obviously that comes up as well. So again, when there's a single snow event of 2 inches or more, successive snow events with accumulated snow depth of 2 inches or more, the city enforces municipal code 4.09, which is shoveling sidewalks. So the Director of Public Works is charged with enforcement of the ordinance per 4.09B. It has been a long-standing policy that if another snow event takes place within the enforcement window, enforcement action stops and then restarts at the end of any subsequent event. The Director of Public Works also uses discretion based on weather forecasts. If a snow event is predicted within a short time of an enforcement action, they will then consult with city personnel and decide whether to begin or postpone enforcement action. So currently, the following action is taken after the stoppage of a snow event. No earlier than 24 hours after the snow event is terminated, The part-time code enforcement officer checks sidewalks in the city for compliance with the above municipal code. Any sidewalks not in compliance are still not technically in violation, but as a courtesy, the CEO provides a door hanger advising the resident of the fact that the sidewalk has not been cleared and will be rechecked after 24 hours. Most sidewalks are 4 feet wide. A wheelchair is about 3 feet wide. So the CEO is instructed to ensure that sidewalks are cleared at least 3 feet wide for enforcement action. Once the additional 24 hours has elapsed, so a total of 48 hours, the CEO inspects the sidewalks. If the sidewalk is cleared, no further action is taken. If the sidewalk is not cleared, the CEO documents the address, takes date timestamps before condition photos, and notifies the city contractor or appropriate city department if a contractor is not procured. And over the last 2 years, that has been an issue. So we have not been able to procure a contractor. So that then does fall on our kind of additional streets or park and rec staff. And as we talked about, if they are maintaining roads or working on trails or any other sidewalks or anything, that obviously delays their ability then to enforce the code. But we do try to do the best we can under all circumstances. So again, under the contract, the contractor or city department is required to clear the sidewalks within 24 hours of notification by the CEO. Once the sidewalk is cleared, the contractor or city department takes dates and timestamps after condition photos. Currently, if the contractor or city department arrives to clear a location after receiving information from the CEO and the sidewalks have been successfully cleared, the property owner is still billed for the service because obviously that is time that our staff has had to take to go out there. The contractor or city department has 5 days to provide the photos and an invoice for the snow removal to the city. And then the CEO verifies the location, ensures the after photos sufficiently documented a clear sidewalk, and processes a spreadsheet with the billing information. That information then is reviewed by the Director of Public Works and then approval before forwarded to to the finance department. And then finance pays the contractor and then bills the owner identified in the spreadsheet. What I miss, Howard?
You got it.
All right.
Questions on our snow removal policy relative to streets or our snow removal policy relative to sidewalks? And today I asked the mileage of the streets we have, and straight miles, we have 60 miles of streets that have to be cleared. And actually it's kind of a little bit more than 60 miles because that assumes that you just have 2 lanes, but on the roads where we have 3 and 4 lanes, it takes another pass through. So you would have to add that, but 60 miles, how many snow plows do we have?
We have the 6 plow trucks, and we have 2 front end loaders that have plow and a wing. So total of 8 large vehicles, and then we have the smaller vehicles, 1 tons and stuff that do the alleys and parking lots and stuff like that.
Questions?
A couple of questions, one from a resident on Case Street, Howard. Wondering why they appear to always be the last street plowed, and wondering if there is some sort of rotational thought between some of these side streets that aren't emergency routes that appear to be kind of the forgotten few at the end of every snowfall, I guess.
We try to do from most traveled to least traveled. I'll double check about Case Street itself. It is a through street, but when you're talking about dead ends and cul-de-sacs, usually those are toward the end of the times anyways, because there's fewer people and fewer vehicles traveling on them. So I'll double check. The issue is that we split the city up into sections, and each of the plow vehicles have a specific section that they generally work with all the time. So it just depends on the operator and how they configure their route.
They're just wondering if they could be considered maybe once this year, I guess. The only other question I hear is why we always appear to have so much slush on the streets. Specifically asked of me is, why don't we put the plows all the way down onto the ground and plow? So they always appear, they always say that there appears to be a layer of snow left behind. That we always appear to have more slushy streets than our neighboring communities. And that's certainly not, let me make this clear, that's certainly not to say that people are unhappy with the services we provide. They're not. These are just general questions are all. That's all.
Thanks. It helps if you have newer, smoother streets that don't have dips and bumps and everything else in them. It's easier for the plows to ride down if they have to, ride over some of the dips and bumps and stuff. It's a little more difficult. So that could be one reason why people see that.
Thank you.
I have another question. So if I wanted to be a snowplow driver, do I go to snowplow driving school?
Well,
just-
under the current rules, if you do not have a commercial driver license, CDL, then you must go to a training school for CDL operation.
Right, but that
And
doesn't
then-
have anything to do with snowplowing.
Once you have a CDL, then you have to work and get trained by our current staff on how to operate the snow plows that we have. It takes a while and takes some practice and experience.
And you had a question.
Yes, I have some comments. My comments relate to sidewalks and this policy. And I wrote a letter or two about this. I think it was last year. And this was in response to the people on maybe Chestnut Street. And that was the church, First English, and the lady that lived on the corner there, she called me up as well. So it was a situation that the people were given, according to them, they were given the timeline that they had to have their street cleaned by Sunday noon. And so the lady called me up and said that I cannot get anybody. She called me up on a Saturday afternoon and said, I cannot get anybody to clean this street.
Reader sidewalk.
Excuse me, clean the sidewalk. And then the church, they talked to me about it too. So I'm looking for flexibility because in that situation, the city threw a lot of sludge onto the street on the evening. What would that be? Probably about Friday night. And by the next day, it was frozen ice. And also the situation was that the temperature was very low so that the people could not remove the ice. And they had to, they couldn't just simply shovel out snow. They were trying to remove ice. So I think we need flexibility in this policy so that people aren't faced with a fine because they don't do something by Sunday noon. So Sunday noon, I saw the church trying to get the ice off the street, and the lady had help from her neighbors, and she couldn't find anybody as far as a contractor to clean off the street. That's just a sidewalk. So that's there were two things there. One, the lack of flexibility as far as the person, the CEO, or is that the CSO, community service officer, whatever you call a person,
CEO.
part-time.
Code enforcement officer, CEO.
Pardon?
CEO, code enforcement officer.
Okay, CEO. So I need more flexibility. And also, the city should have, they wrote me back a letter and made comments about my trying to help people. And then I was showing favoritism to people. And I believe I was showing helpfulness to people, not favoritism. So that when you come to a situation that is severe like that, you should have used judgment to take away that requirement that they had to have something cleared by Sunday noon. So when you wrote your letter to me, you left out one, you left out that the ice was severe, very cold, and two, you left out that the ice came from the city. So it was a city problem that caused the problem to those people. So I think that needs to be addressed, that the city sometimes causes the problem and they should admit the problem. Now, the people that answered that letter was the chief of police and Howard. So if they want to speak to this, fine.
Okay. Snow removal from sidewalks is never a pleasant discussion. In the years I've been, what would you say is a pleasant discussion, Eileen? How many
No,
years? have-
actually, Ken, I was thinking about a property that I did own on Washington Street, and the street was widened and the sidewalk is, I don't know, it's at least 3 feet wide, maybe a little wider. And there's literally no place for the snowplow to put the snow except on that sidewalk. And I accept that because that street needed to be widened, and I accept that. And so, yes, there's a lot of snow on that sidewalk, and I have to take it, did have to take it and push it the opposite direction onto the grass. So is it work? Yes, but you live in the city, people walk on the sidewalks, and even if there's ice, yes, it takes work. And if you are an elderly person and you can't get somebody to help you on a Sunday, I appreciate that. That would be difficult. But to say to be flexible, you're gonna have a lot of people asking to be flexible. And I think that you start with the rule that's there, and then as you did, you can try to work with the city if there's a real issue. But I don't think you can change the ruling because the city put something on the sidewalk that literally they have no other place to put it.
But he put it on the sidewalk and the condition was severe cold. Salt
understand.
would not take care of this whatsoever.
Yep, I understand that, and that certainly can
So
happen,
that's where you need flexibility, judgment.
possibly
You
in
need
a
to
case
give
like that.
to the person.
I think you can, as you said, you can talk to the city and see if something could be.
I was gonna say, is it
Done in
possible to
that
give this code enforcement person with some guidance, discretion on these couple of times when something like this might occur? And we all support that person, that code enforcement officer who's part-time. I'm guessing who's going to be young and probably not very experienced. Perhaps some guidance from some of the city people would assist them. And we can all support them. And when people call in and start to complain about fair and something not being fair, we support this individual and their judgment when these few freak things happen. I don't think it's too much to ask. I think it's simple. It doesn't have to be written down. I think the police have been doing it for a long time in terms of the discretion anyway. Just a comment, that's all.
Yeah, I just, in this vein of this conversation, think that when you say flexible, I think that flexibility needs a bound, like a border, like what is flexible to me may not be flexible to you. may want a week when we can only give a day. So I think if we go along and use even that verbiage of flexibility, I think there still needs to be a cap or a board, something on it that states specifically where do we stop? Where does it go? But I was just thinking more higher than that when I was thinking about what Barb said about the how accessible can we get, pretty much is what I got from her question was how easy is it or how difficult for someone else to be a snowplow person, right? Because the issue now is that we may not have as many people to fix or to help us with the situation, but we do have residents who could shovel snow, right? We do have residents. And so maybe if we reach more out to how can we utilize the residents and maybe, I know there are kids that shovel snow. You know what I'm saying? How can we find answers to these questions that won't involve the technicality of the city coming with big plot, you know what I'm saying? I think I would rather look in that area and kind of address that and then see how we can work together. And if the church needs somebody to come and they can't get the city, you know, there's some twins out here who shovel, you know, let's just put the resources out. I don't know. That's just my thought, you know. I'm always looking for it, like, how do we fix this instead of like constantly browbeating and then it costs us extra money and yeah. That's it.
It would be great if somebody would develop a list of all available kids to scoop snow, because and there are. I
Yeah.
mean, I've
Yeah.
heard more than one person say
Yeah.
that, you know, kids come by and they have shovels and they pay to have those kids shovel snow. So anyway, and that'd be great if that would happen instead of having our staff having to shovel snow. So thank you for the update. And at this point in time, my weather app says we have sleet, but no snow. And so maybe we won't have to worry about snow right now. So the other item then on our agenda is to go into closed session. We have two closed session items per Wisconsin State Statute 1985, parent 1, parent A, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties and investing of public funds or conducting other specified public business. We have a development agreement that we'll be looking at, and then the contract with Public Administration Associates. It is possible that we will come out of closed session into open session and take action. I would believe that that will be on the contract. It would not be on the development agreement. So if you're interested, you can stay around. If you're or whatever. All right, so I'll take a motion to go to closed session per 1985, parent 1, parent E.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to closed session. Candace will vote.
Yes. Sorry, I shut my microphone. Doss, Killian,
Billion?
Yes. Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
motion carries.